Welcome back to our next roundtable discussion with CWA President of Local 1180, Gloria Middleton. Madam President, we're joined by a panel of 4 members of your union, and it is really enlightening for me to listen firsthand to what they have to say. Let me introduce them one more time. We are joined by Amanda Novello. Amanda is a representative from the private sector shops. She works at the Century Foundation, a progressive nonpartisan think tank that seeks to foster opportunity, reduce inequality, and promote security at home and abroad. We are also joined by Sharon Hepburn. Sharon is an administrative manager with the New York City Comptroller's Office and a Local 1180 activist. We are joined by Mary Mason. Mary is a Local 1180 retiree from HRA and a very active member of the Local 1180 Retiree Member Brigade. And we're joined by Anthony Lewis. Mr. Lewis is a PAA at HRA and an HRA shop steward. The topic for this segment, early voting. Madam President, things are being done differently here in New York State.
Yes, it is. New York State lawmakers finally approved a series of reforms included to make it easier to vote. We're one of the few states in the United States that did not have early voting. Beginning this year, voting will start to take place October 26th, making sure that people can vote on weekends and making sure that people are able to vote in various polling places across the city. Now, one of the issues with early voting is that for every 50,000 people in New York City, there must be a polling place. Now, based on your experience with voting, do you think the city is prepared to do this early voting and having these locations set up? And will people be able to know where to go to vote?
I do. I do, because I see a lot more people signing up to work the polls, and I see more and more people interested in working the polls who are not already doing so. And so I think, that being said, I think it should work fine.
How do you feel about that, Mary?
I think it's a good thing. And if there are any glitches, I hope they will find them before they go live when it's time for people to vote. Because they did run into problems last year with the machines. A lot of the machines were not adequately working. So, and some polling places were without machines. So I think, I think it's a good thing, but just making sure that everything go well when it's time to vote.
When I think about voting, I remember the Obama election and how people were waiting on lines for hours. So while I am very pleased with this early voting, I worry about that. What about you?
I ran into problems in the last voting because the machines broke down and there was definitely a problem. So I'm hoping that all of that is resolved and the early voting will definitely help, because it will prevent so many people online waiting too long. So I think it will work.
Amanda, how do you feel about early voting, and how is New York City prepared for it?
Can't quite speak to New York City. I'm a Jersey City resident, but we have had similar issues, I'm sure. I would also say that I think that voting is a worker issue, which is, I'm sure, why CWA is involved with it, because some workers get to come in late or some time off or have their bosses be understanding if they need to go vote, but a lot of workers can't take time off. So I think it's a worker and an equity issue. So having that time be set up on the weekends, I think is really good.
And actually the law, as I recall, says that for city workers, that they're supposed to get 2 hours to be able to go to vote where they don't have a regular day off. So November 5th is the regular day off, but if you can vote on the weekends, that certainly helps. There's also in the law, as of 2020, young people will be permitted to pre-register to vote when they are 16 and 17. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Anthony, how do you feel about that?
I don't know about that, but I know once you turn 18 years of age that you should be able to vote. I know getting my children to vote is a hard thing. I got to drag them out to bed some days. They might come, but this early voting is making my job easier to get them to the polls. And I know once they vote, they go home happy that they participated in the election.
Okay. Mary?
Well, I think for them to pre-register is a good thing because they can pre-register at 16. And then when they turn 18, they're already in the system. So I think it's a good thing.
Talking to young people at as early as possible about voting is the best thing that could happen. As I talk to a lot of young people, they keep saying, well, my vote doesn't count. And we need to have that conversation with them about how important it is to vote and how voting, especially for minorities and for women, the suffrage movement, the Jim Crow era, all of that history needs to be told to our young people so they understand how important voting is. What has been your experience talking to young people about voting?
Well, I have twin boys, and soon as they were 18, I took them to register, and every election they are voting, which is I take them with me, or I would remind them. They're very responsible when it comes to voting, and because I always telling them about politics and what's going on and how it's going to affect them, I think they're very proactive in that, so I'm proud of that. Yeah, so it's very important.
Amanda, as our millennial at the table, what are your conversations with young people about voting and the importance of it?
I think people realize that some of the issues that we face are going to affect them throughout their lives. And from what I've seen, even from 2 years ago to today, young people are more engaged in political discussions than ever. So I think making it as easy to vote and making the information as accessible as possible, just to allow people to exercise the right that I think they are compelled to have, would be ideal.
So early voting, I believe, is one of the best things that New York could have done for us, especially going into the 2020 election.
So, Madam President, let me throw this question to you. You mentioned one of the hardest things is getting young people to understand the importance of their vote, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you would think the election of President Bush, the son, what happened down in Florida, that young people would get the message. But let's bring it completely to New York and what happened with the recent race for Queens District Attorney.
Exactly.
So how could they not understand how important their vote is when that race was decided by a razor-thin margin?
Razor thin. And I'm proud to say that we have over 3,000 members in that district with the Queens DA race, and we made phone calls, we worked the polls, we did a lot of intervention in supporting that race, and I'm sure our members made the difference in that race. Every vote counts.
Madam President, let me direct a question to Amanda. I guess as our millennial at the table here, even though all the ladies are young and so is our gentleman here. Here's the question. When folks, the rationale when they register to vote in other states is that you're going to get your driver's license early, so let's go ahead and make it the same with voting. Would that make a difference? Does that make a difference?
Of course. I think anytime that processes are made more easy and straightforward, you have someone in the room, why don't you just do both things at the same time? Like, why do I need to be reminded on different occasions to do different things and go through different paperwork and go to different offices? I think it just makes sense.
So, Madam President, in closing this segment, is there any last thought you have as it relates to early voting?
Just that I'm so glad we finally came into the 21st century to have early voting. I can't say it strong enough about how important it is for every individual who's able to vote, qualified to vote. It makes a difference.
Very interesting, very direct, and very accurate. Thank you for joining us during this segment. Our next roundtable discussion will focus on the issue of cannabis.